I had to miss this Wednesday.
Okay.
I was there.
Oh, how was it?
It was actually really good. Chris did a great job on movement analysis. He took a PSIA examiner or interski guy and he had him do a straight run into a wedge. And he said, okay, guys, do a movement analysis on that. What is he doing? And it was really good. And then we took it into like a wedge turn. It was really good because it wasn't about looking for fault. It was just about describing what he was doing. And it had to be very simple because you're doing a straight run.
Right.
And then he went from a straight run to, okay, we beat that up. Let's do it in a wedge now. So I found it really interesting.
Cool. Cool. Good. Yeah, he's getting better and better. You know, he was pretty uncomfortable at the very beginning, which was kind of odd, but he's getting better and better with those presentations as he goes along. So
I
yeah,
kept my mouth shut because neither of you guys were there. It was all Vail guys.
I just listen in. I mean, I don't really care. I'll throw something out every once in a while if I think that,
Right.
my
Well,
job.
I figure it's their show, and they were all talking, so I'm like, I'll just keep my mouth shut.
You got the ones who want to talk and you don't want to get them step on their toes anyway.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm looking for, I'm not there to critique or to criticize. I'm there to just, I like different viewpoints because I sometimes get stereoscopic vision and our blinders on, and I need to see it from a different angle. And that's why I appreciate doing those every once in a while. I'm surprised Noriko doesn't contribute more because she does come from a completely 90-degree angle than I do. So, but that's that's her. Anyway, cool. Rotation. And I'm just going to kind of breeze through these because granted, the first presentation that we did last year, if you guys care to look at it, please do. It's very informative, probably way too way too way too everything, as I always am, right? I tend to take us, and if you guys don't know, this is my bias. Rotation is 150% my bias. I am all about rotation, and I think a lot of the other skill sets are either use rotation in some way, and it's because that's the way the body moves, and that was the way I was trained for the body to move. That you're always moving and looking and turning. And even when you're running forward, there's always times when your body is, making cycles and circles. So that's kind of how I come from it. I always see everything in terms of movements and rotations. So anyway, here's the fundamental: control the rotation, turning, pivoting, steering. Those are the outcomes with leg rotation separate from the upper body. And this is the straight fundamental. And I always ask, what's missing from this? Because that's not how I say it, right? When I'm talking to people, this is not what I say.
It doesn't define the upper body, first of all.
It doesn't define the upper body, right? It doesn't define the upper body. It doesn't tell anything about what the upper body does, right? It doesn't say.
And it doesn't tell you how.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you at all how. And you can almost say that with all of them, but it's almost particularly ambiguous with rotation, right? It's almost purposely ambiguous. We only talk about pivoting, steering, and turning. And we only look at it from one particular aspect, which is, that's kind of the frustrating part for me because rotation is so inherent in the way we move. So what does it not say? It doesn't say anything about stableness, discipline of the upper body. Doesn't, and when we look at it, well, what's your guys' understanding? You know, we always got to ask this. I mean, how has your understanding changed since last year? Or do you have anything that's different than what you used to think before? I'm always interested to know where everybody's at.
Well, one of the things that I think about is to be effective, have good rotation in your legs, you need to have your knees flexed and your ankles flexed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you're stiff, you can't do it. So it doesn't really talk to that, but that's an important piece of the rotation.
Yeah, yeah. So what, I mean, that's, how do you do that, right? As a key. I mean, that's one of the hows, but you're creating torque, right?
Right.
Kind of like that idea of a key and a lock. You have to have a width, and we create width by flexing our legs. So we can create torque. Tom Gelly's all,
Well, but what Ron and Dan and Ron were talking about was not really like a still upper body, like it's not that the upper body is stiff and never moves.
yeah,
It just moves in, according to what they were saying, it just moves in the opposite direction to the legs, so it appears to be stable, but it's not that it's never moving like what you're seeing here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Did you guys all watch those videos? Because they just came out with one yesterday, which I think I shared with you guys too. I love those things. Every time I come back to them, they're so unbelievably nuanced. I think I pick something up new with them every single time. Just the different way they phrase it. They're just incredibly well done. And that's why I liked sharing them with everybody. What'd you guys think of those? Any comments on those? Oops.
I wasn't crazy about them, to be honest with you.
What didn't you like?
There was too much extraneous material in there for my taste.
Yeah, it speaks like the technical manual, right?
Yeah.
Just give me what I need to know.
Right. I need the Reader's Digest version.
I need the simplified version, please. Can I just have the Cliff Notes?
Right.
The Cliff Notes need to speak to where I am now, not what I'm going to be in the future.
Yeah. You know, the other thing about rotation that gets talked about a fair amount, and I didn't understand real well when I first started this certification process, is the fact that you have to, when you rotate, you have to rotate against something. Doesn't matter where if you're rotating your ankle or your hips, or you have to have something to rotate against. And somebody said to me, well, you know, when you rotate your legs, you're kind of rotating one against the other. And I didn't really understand that at first. And it also helped me understand why you need a stable upper body, because that stable core gives you something to rotate your legs against in your hip sockets.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, that is what I liked about these videos, is that in a very humorous way, they do get into the technology and the physics, because I think there's a big difference between doing something by mimicking and doing something because you really understand what it is that you're doing and trying to accomplish.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, they talk about the stableness, but at the same time, they talk about this idea of having a strong upper body and strong core. They also talk about the fact that even though that happens, every action, rotational action, has an equal and opposite reaction. And the idea of the two legs working independently means that one's rotating, even though they're rotating in one direction, one's rotating inwardly and the other one's rotating outwardly. And that's how helps keep the pelvis stable, because if we rotated one before we rotate the other, that's what jerks them. You know, if you rotate this out, the pelvis has got to move out with it, because there's nothing there to hold it. Otherwise, we have to have some kind of a rotary push off. And they talk about that in there too. You either are grounded with the ground or you're grounded through the upper body or a little bit of both. But ideally, you should have a nice, hard, stable upper body. That's kind of what our boy, well, this guy too. Nice, stable upper body, right? That's one of the things about this, Mark here has got a tremendous stable upper body. And those legs just turn marvelously from one side to the other. Because they work, they work against each other, which helps stabilize the pelvis. We'll talk about that a little bit too. I have some nice little things that we can look at. So cool. This is straight from the technical manual. Feel free to download this and look at it all you want. Rotational movements can originate from different parts within the body. We'll talk about that. The effect of rotating legs requires a strong, stable, quiet upper body, disciplined, whatever the word that you want to use. We need to be strong in the upper body in order to have something to rotate against. What do others say? You can read these at your own. I think the one I really like is, Encyclopedia Bob says the rotation actually describes a family of related movements, all based on the laws of conservation of momentum. That's that idea of Newton's third law of economy, which means something that is in motion stays in motion. Once something starts turning, you have to act against it in order to get it to stop turning. That's kind of what that means. Big R, real R, little reality is that all movements that we do are some kind of rotation because the movements rotate around a pivot point, which is our joints. When you go back to the technical manual, rotational control refers to only turning the skis about a vertical axis of the body. But, little r is all these other little movements. Simple, this is just how you twist against it again. Outcomes include twisting, steering, turning, and pivoting. All works in that orbital plane. This is according to PSIA. Here's the definition of upper and lower body. But the key is that, I don't have the whole pelvis up here, but the pelvis has all the biggest, most powerful muscles in our body are all connected to the pelvis. All those crazy big muscles that we have in our legs all wrap up and end up at the pelvis. We have gluteus maximus, gluteus minimus, we have all the thigh muscles, we have all the hamstrings all attached. That's why we have this great big flange out there, because that's where all those muscles attach. And then we have the femur bone, and we got the little knob on the femur bone. And that knob on there is where a lot of muscles attach to help us with adduction and abduction. So this is where we need to understand that the pelvis is literally everything. But I think you already know that. But there is an overlap between the two. Now you got to point that out too. This is one of those things where I like to talk about the difference between pelvis rotation and leg rotation. And the guy on the left is rotating the legs similar to the guy or the girl on the right. But his pelvis is turning a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And hers is not moving much at all. And we're definitely gunning for the movement on the right and not the movement on the left. Because she's even trying to align her shoulders up with her pelvis when she does these window wipers. So anyway.
Yeah, the guy's turning his spine a lot.
He's turning his spine, and it's kind of in that, he's not turning his lumbar region much. He's turning the lumbar, he's turning it all around his thorax, which actually, from a physical standpoint, you lose a lot of power when you do that. You lose a lot of the ability to lift when you do that. When you can keep the pelvis and the shoulders aligned and not use a whole lot of twisting between the lumbar and the thorax area, you can lift a lot more weight. Or in our case, you can push against a lot more weight, a lot more, we can resist more pressures. I welcome you guys to try this. I do this one all the time in my yoga classes. It's a really, really good exercise, especially if you can do it without actually having your hands on the ground.
Mhm.
This is just
But-
rocks. You know, remember this from the video. One is the bolt is rotating in the nut, or the nut's rotating on the bolt. One of those is kind of like oh, let's see. Oh, when we go back to these, if we go back to these folks, there's also like you know, we only have so much ability. We only have about so much, there's a limitation to how much you can rotate in your pelvis. So at some point, her pelvis also moves too. When she reaches that limit, she just has a lot more range of motion than he does.
But does it have to do with the fact that her legs are much wider apart and that gives her much more mobility?
I think it might speak to intent too.
Yeah.
He's showing his way of doing window wipers and she's showing a different way of doing in window wipers. She may have a lot greater range of motion than he does, because the range of motion could be from 45 degrees to 80 degrees internal, and 60 to 80 degrees external. That's quite a range. And then femoral rotation is limited to about 45 degrees in each direction.
Well, it's very obvious that his hip flexors are tight. And if he were on skis, he would end up squaring himself up to the trees.
Yeah, probably would.
Mhm.
But again, you know, I mean, this is about intent. I think she's trying to keep her pelvis from moving, and he is
Yeah,
just,
she is.
and he's like, yeah, no, this is how you do it. You know,
Yeah.
he's not.
Right. Well, the difference is you also see that she has abdominal tension and he has no abdominal tension.
That's a good point. I never even looked at that.
Mhm.
Yeah, when I do this exercise, it's all about building that core, because it really hits you right in these areas right here. If you could try to keep yourself up, it's a really great core exercise. So anyway, moving on. One of these, oops, forgot. One of these is the pelvis twisting on top, like the femur rotating in the pelvis, and the other one's pelvis rotating on the femur. One of those is about rotation, is about counter, and the other one's about leg rotation. So if the femur is rotating in the pelvis, that's leg rotation. If the pelvis is rotating on top of the femur, that is counter rotation, or as we like to call counter. Or anticipation? Anyone? We're going to start talking about moments in time.
And well, anticipation is counter.
Anticipation is counter. I like that. I like anticipation, but I don't like, I'm not, I think a lot of people misunderstand what it really means. It is a counter position, but it's also about the twisting nature of building that twist, building that coil. So anyway, moving on, got to keep moving here. All right, here's gentleman Bob doing the most massively good, freaking unbelievable side slips ever, pivot slips. He's not moving his pelvis much. All right. So we have the four things. We have upper body rotation. This is a good example of what upper body rotation looks like. Upper body rotation is generally, you can see The shoulders and the arms and the hands move before the skis do. Does anybody need to see that in real life?
See that a lot every day when I have skis on.
Well, funny enough, this is right on, right off of, Larry Yard Sale.
Hmm.
Just something random I shot a video of. But it's pretty typical. Creates torque relationship. The movement is slow, but it's easy to understand and execute. People know what it is. Right? Advantages are intuitive, easy to understand, feels safe. Disadvantages, it oversteers the skis, you get a Z shape. Slow, big twisting moments. It tends to be defensive. Moves the body in up, inside, and back position, which you kind of can see with this guy here. You know, he's kind of going up and then over and then back. All right. Then we have another random from same day. Got counter rotation. So there was an interesting point that was brought up, that Ron brought up, is that what happens if you take counter rotation and you slow it way down? Because counter rotation is kind of cool and useful as a tactic because it can be very, very quick. You know, the response can be very fast because basically if you twist the body one direction, the skis are going to instantly twist the other, right? It's that idea of I create an action and I get an immediate reaction, right? Which is what this guy kind of is doing, right? Kind of twisting one way, twisting the other, and he looks all cool. But it's really a good tactic. And I've had a video somewhere of a guy in moguls, and he was like, he did like this real quick. He was doing really beautiful mogul routine, and it was like really nice. And he was doing these really nice counters, and then right in there, he had to make one really quick turn, which only lasted about, you know, this long. Because that's the problem with counter rotation is that you have a limited range of motion, right? As soon as the body stops turning, skis stop turning. And sometimes that's not very far. But he did that. He was like, he was skiing along, skiing nicely, and then right, he had to make a real quick turn. And it was kind of a little side hill movement, and he did it completely with a counter rotation, and he did it really, really fast. But what happens when you slow the movement way down? Anybody?
I mean,
Anybody catch that
counter
little-
rotation almost by definition is a quick motion. So I'm struggling with how you'd slow it down and make it effective because you lose the force.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
what I
you
had
lose a force.
an examiner tell me this exact question because I asked it. He said, well, that's leg rotation if you slow it down enough.
If you slow it down and you control the movement, it turns into leg rotation.
Makes sense.
Because you're not now using your upper body to make the twist, you're using the upper body to twist against. So it slows it way down. But it only happens if you have independent leg rotation. Because if you don't have it as independent rotation, you got to figure out how to get the body to start the rotation. And then it turns back into upper body rotation. That's why all of these are kind of tactics that we use, because they're all useful. I mean, but the ideal one is going to be upper body. I'm sorry, leg rotation, independent leg rotation. I want to stress it as, I think it should say independent leg rotation, because they do have to work independently, but at the same time. All right. Then we have.
When you say, Chuck, when you say independent, do you mean independent of the upper body or independent of each other?
Independent of the upper body and independent of each other. Both.
Okay.
Yeah. Does not mean that they don't work in conjunction. It just means that one twists one way and the other twists the other. So they're both turning to the right, but one's twisting internally and the other one's twisting externally. And then they work back the other way.
Unless you're
twisting
doing, unless you're,
internally.
unless you're turning into a wedge.
Unless you're turning into a wedge, exactly. So, and then we have, I'm reducing outside agency. I know Chris kind of glossed this one over. Outside agency is about using either a blocking or stabilizing pole plant, or terrain, or the deflection of the skis. That's why I'd almost argue, and you can watch this video because, or this GIF, because if you look, you can see how he pole plants and it starts the rotation. He's using the pole plant to start the rotation. And I'll bring up a video of moguls, and you can see that how he's using it to stabilize the rotation, or in other words, stop from over rotating. He's using the pole plant for that too, but he might be mixing in some blocking pole plants. And then deflection from the skis, I could almost argue that's what Riley was doing in his turns. He was using ski shape to help with the rotation of the legs. Where Mark was like continuously turning, it's almost like Riley was getting to a point and then letting the skis do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then last, of course, is our buddy Mark showing us leg rotation, where the legs rotate against each other and against the pelvis, which is kind of what they were alluding to. That was that level 5 part of what their conversation was. Not only are the upper and lower body working against each other, but the legs are working against each other also to help stabilize the upper body. It's neither, you can either have it fast or slow. Fast, of course, is going to turn into more of a counter rotation. But if you do it, it's much, much more controlled. And it's, unfortunately, it's a learned moment. It's not something that's intuitive. Questions? And like I said, I'm just kind of breezing through these. All right. Cool. Here's that idea of independent leg rotation. Legs rotate simultaneously against each other, which helps stabilize the pelvis. Because the legs rotate one way and then the pelvis rotates the other way. But if we have a stable core and we slow the movement down, then they will work, they help stabilize the pelvis. Pelvis doesn't move as much. We have to have our guts to do that. And then, of course, we see this all the time, which is the sequential movement. This is kind of how this is done. If one leg rotates before the other, it causes the pelvis to twist. And this is straight from their little video too on counters. But the anchor tension must be the upper body. All right, cool. Creating muscular tension. How many of you guys have talked about this in a clinic?
Yes, of course.
Coiling? A
Yeah.
lot.
Yes.
All the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many of you know that the uncoiling part helps you start the turn,
Yeah.
and that you can hold on to that energy as long as you can?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Then I don't have to talk about it.
Mhm.
And then we just have some more stuff here. Muscular stabilization gives legs something to rotate against. Rotational movements help align the skeletal structure to resist the outside forces. This is where rotation starts talking about, or how this is how rotation aligns with the other fundamentals, which we'll go over next week.
Mm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Creates counter. What is counter? It is a moment in time where the body is going facing one direction and the legs are facing a different direction.
Mhm.
Cool, that's it. All right, let's watch some video, man.
I just want to mention that one way to practice that off the snow is to use the Everlast discs that you placed your feet on, and you
Okay.
stabilize your body and you just move your legs underneath.
Yeah.
I find it helpful.
So here is, well, we're just going to use our first person here. This is more of a level 2 style. And most of you should be able to pick this right up as to what we're looking at. And all we're looking for is at this point in time is, well, I mean, I'm going to let you guys view it. All right. Here's our victim. This is the level 2 candidate for next year.
Mm.
Well, if we're just looking at rotation, there's not a lot of separation of upper lower body, and she's using upper body rotation to start.
Cool. What moves first?
I think her shoulders.
Yeah, her shoulders. Do the legs ever turn?
So it looks like on her right-hand turn, kind of in the shaping phase, she does get a little turn out of the legs.
Just a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Not very much, and it might be the camera angle.
Maybe so.
The appearance looks very much like the movement of a unibody.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
No separation.
We don't have a lot of separation, do we?
No.
None, not like next to none. And she's on her inside. She's tipping to the inside.
There's very little flexion and extension also. I mean, like the legs barely change lengths.
Okay, cool. So how does that affect her rotation?
It limits the rotation because we don't see it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and from an intent and on this snow, doesn't really matter. It's an easy run. She's doing what she wants to do. The issue is when things get tougher, she's going to have trouble.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because she doesn't have control of her skis because she's starting it all with her upper body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and her, especially her outside leg is straight enough through most of the turn that she's not going to be able to use the more powerful muscles of her legs that she'd be able to if she had a little more flexion.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a 1-2 motion, right? Shoulder moves first, body twists. Shoulder tips to the outside of the old turn, which helps her kind of move the center of mass across the skis. Right there. But there's a twisting motion that happens at the same time. Right. The same thing on this side, twists and moves across. So there's not really an opportunity for her to turn her legs. It's more just all upper body rotation. All upper body rotation.
People do this because it's easy and it feels safe because they're tall over their skis. They're in their mind, they're balanced. I get why that people do
But I
this.
also think they do it because they don't know the feeling of rotating their femurs. They don't know that feeling.
Yeah.
It's like Alona said, she puts the people on the discs. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I put my fingers on their hips facing me and I say, turn your legs, but don't put any pressure on my fingers. And they're like, oh, that's hard. Like, you don't do that normally. So it's
No,
hard
you
for
don't.
people to, unless they experience it somehow,
No, they don't,
to
right?
turn the legs without turning them. Yeah.
So this goes back to
So
that.
this person probably never learned it from the beginning. They never experienced that feeling from the beginning. So they just, you know,
And I'm going to venture to say that this is actually a ski instructor. This is her second.
could
This
be, sure.
last year was her second year of teaching.
Yep.
Bright girl.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, it comes down to what her intent is. Is her intent to slow down? Or is her intent to, is she offensive or defensive? That usually spells something along the lines of what she's doing. I'm going to say that she's more defensive. And that's causing her not to really steer the skis. She's just kind of pivoting and sliding. To use two different outcomes. Pivoting in the turn, pivoting there in the turn, and then skidding there at the end. Because the legs never really rotate. So that, you know, she knows what she knows, which is I turn the body and the skis do what I want them to do. Right? Because that's simple. It's easy. Nobody's ever told her that, hey, you know, if you point your toes,
Right.
they might go somewhere.
Right.
All right, I got another one here.
Huh.
This one's an interesting one that came up in Jenny's thing the other day. So some of you have already seen this one. Hey, Gordon, you ought to come and join us on Tuesdays if you get a chance. Oh,
I tried to, and the link that I had wouldn't work, and I even emailed Jenny a couple of times. I haven't heard back,
All
so
right,
maybe forward me the invite next time.
I got a new link that might help.
Yeah, because I would definitely like to join that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, you know, sometimes it's Jenny, but here it is. All right. So this one's interesting because when we watched it, I mean,
Oh,
what he's doing is like a side hill.
hmm.
And they're side hill short turns, which means and he's doing an interesting thing because then he goes by them, right? And he goes kind of down the hill. I don't think he's doing the side hill thing there. So the back of it's not really important, but he was doing an interesting thing here. I wonder if you guys would pick up on it because I thought it was kind of cool. It kind of illustrates
An interesting thing.
sometimes the problems that we get ourselves into because a task. Because a task makes us do weird things. Was anybody there were you there, Scotty?
Yeah, I mean, I made the comment that he has a heavy incline when he makes his left turn.
Yeah, he does, right?
Because of I think he's because he's coming across the hill. In his right turn, he doesn't incline like that.
Yeah, and I mentioned that
Hmm.
there's a weird thing that he's doing at the top of the turn because on only in one direction, right? Because he kind of gets stuck because his effort is to try to keep his body pointed down the hill, right? So this is the good side. And then on this side, he gets right there. And you see what happens? Now he's like, uh-oh, what do I got to do? I'm
A
stuck.
little wedge,
Yeah, well, he's in a wedge because he's trying to release.
right?
But there you go. And he's fine there.
Hmm.
And he gets here again, and all of a sudden he's stuck. So what does he do with his upper body?
He's kind of twisting it so that it's facing
He's
down
popping
the
up.
hill.
No?
Yeah, he's popping up and he's twisting.
You
And
know,
Mhm.
it's like,
he's trying to keep the upper body facing down the hill by twisting the upper body so that it's down the hill, which
Yeah.
is exact, you know, that's why that terminology really
Mhm.
sucks in some ways.
yeah. Yeah,
He's
I
popping.
100% agree.
Mhm.
It's just an interesting
Mhm.
video that came up and it was like, oh, even the guys who are on a national team, if you put them into a specific task, even they will struggle with it, right? Because it puts them in a weird position of, oh yeah, I want to keep my body moving down the hill, which is why he inclines on one side because he doesn't really need, his body's already pointed down the hill, so he doesn't need any angulation, right? So he angulates a lot here in his hip early, and then he gets stuck, and now he's got a twist. And there's almost no angulation, or there's no angulation when he twists.
Hmm.
So you see the
Right there.
similarities between
Mhm.
how he's doing one side, and then we go back to this other girl, right? See, there's a twist. You can see that outside shoulder move down, rotate down. Here's a real bad one right there. Ooh, he's just completely stuck. And he gets right here and it's stuck
Oh.
again, right?
Uh-huh.
And then we
Huh.
watch this girl again,
Mhm.
and we're like, okay, now we know where it came from. Because she gets stuck, she gets square.
Hmm. Hmm. It's very square right there, right there, right there. Phew.
Yeah, it's like the only way she can change her edges is with that up movement to lighten up her skis.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
She's stuck. So I gotta just, how do I release the weight on my skis so I can get them going the other way?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But what did we go back to Josh here, right? He's kind of doing the same thing because he gets in that kind of stuck position. I just thought this was really interesting. That's what I kind of geeked out when I saw this. I was like, oh, you got stuck. And he had to do something in order to get the skis to start rotating back.
Hmm.
So he goes, you know, this side he doesn't go up very much. This side is a lot. This side he doesn't go up very much. This side he's like, I gotta go way up.
That's a long.
that how that affects his ability to get the skis to rotate. And Josh is arguably one of a master of rotational control. Everybody talks about him just being one of the most amazing rotational control guys.
Just a side issue, are his poles too long? And maybe that contributes to some of the sort of awkwardness.
Could be. I don't think it would be. I don't know.
But Chuck, we've
Hard
had this
pressed to say,
conversation about Jim Shaw. Jim Shaw's my height and his poles are 2.5 inches, 3 inches longer than mine. It
And,
looks
you know,
strange, but he's a national teamer.
And I work with him, and I also work with Larry, and Larry's poles are almost 4 inches longer than mine.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
he's only 5'8". He's 4 inches shorter than I am, right? Oh, that reminds me. I did have let me fire up another one here. Uh-oh, what happened to it? Oh, this one. This is one I was looking for. This one's another This is,
Hmm. This guy.
and he uses outside agency a lot in his bumps. But I'm also going to say those bumps are mean, right? So he stops the rotation, he gets a little stuck, and then he wet the rotation. There's that. There's a little bit of counter right there, right? We go back just a shade here.
Mhm.
This video a little bit.
He's definitely, I mean, he's a good skier, but you could see he's definitely having a pressure management issue.
Yeah, yeah, he gets to like right here, and then he gets to right there, and then it's like, uh-oh. Right, there's that stab in order to get the skis to go the other direction.
Mhm.
I mean, if that pole was a noodle, it would have
Yeah,
big trouble, right?
he's using a lot of blocking pole plants.
A lot of blocking pole plants.
Mhm.
And then he has one, which is, this is like, I think this was the, yeah, this was the counter rotation. See how his body twists one way and his legs twist the other?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So these are all tactics that we're going to do in the bumps in order to safely get down. Especially these don't look like they're much fun, right? These look like some mean bumps.
Hmm.
But I like this video because of the way that the Dan and Ron were talking about counter rotation and how the body twists one way and the legs twist the other. There's a lot of going on here.
Well, in watching a lot of the Europeans and the moguls, they do use a lot of blocking pole plants,
Yeah,
more so than the Americans.
way more so than the Americans, right? So I had a conversation with Jimmy this week. I finally sent an email out to him on something that's been kind of bothering me. Or I really want to know because I couldn't figure it out myself. But I had noticed that when I am on rollerblades, and I noticed this in skiing too, and I've been kind of playing with this the last couple of years, is this idea of when I rotate my inside leg, my outside leg, do you guys notice that too? My outside leg moves with it. So if I rotate my inside knee to the inside of the turn, you guys notice that the inside leg goes with it, or the outside leg goes with it? Please say
So
yes.
you're just talking about steering with your inside leg.
Yeah, steering with the
Yeah.
inside leg, right?
Yeah, no, I get that.
So I was talking to Jim Shaw, who's one of the guys that we talk to all the time, about that very thing. And I asked him flat out, is there a biomechanical response that's responsible for that?
Self-preservation.
Well, I just was like, hey, because I noticed it in rollerblading a lot. If I really need to make I need to make a turn really fast, I don't think about rotating my outside leg. I think about moving my inside knee quickly more to the inside. And the outside foot goes with it. And I've always been fascinated by that. It's like an automatic response. So I just flat out asked him, I said, is there anything there that is biomechanical that would indicate that that's, and he just came back and said, I don't know. And he said, it's probably a learned response that happens and you just don't know that it's not learned, right?
But if you think about it, if you get that inside knee moving and tipping and the other one doesn't, skis are going to diverge, and that's a disastrous consequence when the skis are going or different directions from the tips.
Right.
So
Well, I thought maybe it was just the inside knee was getting out of the way too. But I don't think that's true because I thought maybe it was also that maybe the ski, because if you rotate the inside leg to the inside more, tends to put the ski more on edge, which gives the ski more up. The outside ski has more pressure, will bend more in turn, but that doesn't work in rollerblading. That's not how that works in rollerblading. I don't know. I'm still playing with it. I got to figure it out. There's something weird going on. It seems like it's too automatic a response for me. So
Well, rollerblading is all rotation and there's
one hundred
nothing
percent.
else. There's no bending of the ski, there's no edging, so it's purely rotation. I mean, rollerblading is like doing railroad tracks.
Right. All right. Here is somebody who's a little bit more like the way we ski. This is Andres Spittle. Oops, I'm sorry. He's doing more blocking pole plants. This isn't what I was looking for. Oh, duh. I'm in the wrong folder. That's why. Normally I have these in like a folder. I think these are the ones I want. Yeah. Just seems like he's taking these bumps, so it's like very direct.
My legs get sore just watching these guys.
This doesn't look like much fun, does it?
It's a lot of work.
I'm trying to look. This is not the video I want either. Where the hell is the one I want?
It's taking a really straight line.
He is. Oh, duh. Here we go. All right. Back to short turns. This one's available on YouTube. For those of who, I thought this is an interesting video because it's like kind of a comparison between how other ski teams are different than ours.
Chuck, that's jerky enough. It's really hard for me to follow. This one's a little better now.
It is.
Yeah.
Now let me get a little smaller. I didn't want to get a whole lot smaller. That help any? I'll tell you what, I'll slow it way down. Does that help? There we go. So I see a lot of pivoting there.
Yeah, they're kind of Z-shaped and they're like rebound turns, right?
Right.
I mean, it's good skiing. It's just. You can see his inside ski come off the snow, which I don't think is a bad thing.
I'm gonna encourage you to do that.
I am too. That's kind of what I've learned this week is I'm like, Larry used to tell me that all the time. He says, you're picking up your inside ski. So I tried to stop doing it. I'm thinking that's not such a bad thing.
No, we gotta get pressure to the outside ski.
Yeah.
And I have found that your idea of what 5% pressure is not the same thing as what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this in rollerblading this year too, is as soon as I put just a little bit of pressure on the inside foot, my hips automatically go from this to this.
Wow.
Almost automatic. I can feel my hips just suddenly tip up. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. I want to be like this in direct pressure. And as soon as I put a little bit of pressure on there, my hips just it's like a like a weight, like a balance. All of a sudden my hips just start to, and I'm like, I don't like that.
So Chuck, have they changed testing? Because when I did my level 1 years ago, Nigel Connor, I was in his pod, and we absolutely could not lift up a ski at all. They had to be on the snow the whole time. So has that changed?
I don't think that's possible to make short turns. Now, short turns are, and again, it depends on where you're doing it. If you're doing it on general, when I did it at Breckenridge, when Scotty and I did it at Breckenridge, where'd you do yours? We did like American.
The short rate, I can't remember where we did the short radius. It was just an intermediate.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but
it was on an intermediate run, but an intermediate run at Breckenridge is like a green run at Winter Park.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was able to just lay down tracks. And I didn't need to be like I didn't have to worry about my lifting up my inside ski because I could just roll from one side to the other really quickly there, right? Without any threat or fear of getting too fast. Because I was never getting too fast. But if I was on something like Norwegian or Upper Hughes, man, I would be, we did ours when I did the level 3 at Winter Park. It was on Larry Yard Sale. And if you're going to be trying to hold a line, here's some nice skiing. I wonder if this is JF.
yeah, no, this person's skis are on the ground.
They are.
I mean, there's a little bit of separation, but not like the other skiers we saw.
Right there. See right at the end. You can see him get really light, and once in a while they come off.
Once in a while, but the other guys, right. I mean, they were coming off a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if this is JF. Ooh, this is some really nice skiing. There's a little bit of that counter rotation happening. Just you can see how the butt swings just a little bit. But I think that's purely intentional.
It could be the pitch of the slope too.
It is. It does look
like more when he turns left than right.
Doesn't look like the pitch of the hill is. It's not looking very tame.
No.
That looks a lot like JF, doesn't it? Trying to see what kind of skis he's riding on. JF's a Rossi guy.
I don't think this is Jim Shaw, but he skis a little bit like him.
Well, Jim was there as a telemark guy.
Ellie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw his telly runs or some of them.
Woo!
There's some
Pressure
separation.
management issue there. But again, we're looking at like a lot of pivoting, aren't we?
Well, but here, he's doing like what, these, because he's doing jump turns.
Yeah.
Do you think that's terrain related or is that technique related?
I think it might be a little bit of both. Because it almost seems to me, in comparison to like the last guy, who I have a sneaking suspicion is probably JF. Because when you watch JF, look at the contact of the snow that he has on the ground. This is JF, I think, here. Right? He gets very early engagement, like right at the fall line, right? And it's really deflection related.
Well, the other thing going on
This
here,
this guy is like, it's all the skidding is happening way after the fall line, like right there. Right there, right? So he's not getting early engagement. So he's kind of thinking a little bit differently than maybe JF, which is, I don't necessarily, I need to slow down. You know?
yeah, he's struggling a little bit with pressure management. Also, these
Well,
guys
yeah.
are flying, you
He's
know.
got his skis going, he's got his skis going probably faster than he's used to going, right?
Uh-huh. And I'm sure that's part of the demonstrations is the speed at which they're going is going to be way up there.
Yeah, because he's collapsing, the legs are shaking, right? He's turning his skis a lot across the hill.
But they're all in the same terrain.
Yeah, they're all on the same terrain.
So it's just different styles.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is bad skiing. It's just different.
It's good skiing. He's getting some pretty high edge angles there.
Yeah, he almost skis like an old racer, doesn't he? Could be.
Well, Europeans tend to focus more on racing and then taking it to skiing rather the way Americans do, which is focus on ski technique and then think about speed.
So the Alpine, as you I'm sure know, the Alpine level 3 and 4 over there, they have to be very competitive with the best racers. It's and talk to some level 4 British certs, and just a couple of them would spend 2 years racing to try and get fast enough to post the kind of time they needed to in order to qualify level 4.
You know what? This is some nice skiing.
His skis don't leave.
They don't, but I'm pretty sure this is a female.
Oh, well, okay, her skis. Of course, if somebody's that good, it's got to be a female.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna say this is some really accurate skiing. Really accurate skiing.
Now,
Very early
I have
edge.
that comment about the rollerblades when you're saying your inside leg rotates and your outside leg just follows along.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, isn't that a good thing? I mean, her legs, I mean, her skis are staying in parallel the whole time, indicating that when the inside leg's turning, the outside leg is mimicking the same angle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, she's getting the inside leg. The old outside leg is getting out of the way quickly.
Mhm.
She's not getting trapped into a skid. She
Right.
gets off of it early, like right there, right? See how the legs move across?
Yeah.
This is really accurate skiing.
Yeah. She's in a lot more.
Yeah, that's nice.
Very impressive. I wonder if she was a former racer too. Cool. All right, I'm gonna stop recording. Any questions about tonight?
Yeah, with this, which hip sort of moves first to initiate the turn? Is it the new inside hip or the old inside hip?
What are you? Okay. So we're talking about the hip. So the hip is the outside of the pelvis, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
So aren't you directing pressure to the new outside ski, which would be the old inside ski, through an extension movement or a retraction movement of the other one? So it could be either one, depending on whether you're doing extension or retraction or both.
So the hip doesn't really initiate the next turn, right?
I mean, your first movement is to direct pressure to the new outside ski,
First,
and then tip,
first
and then
movement is
rotate.
transfer pressure. That
Mhm.
happens in we soften the old outside leg and we're stiffening the new and outside leg, right?
yeah, but you're also moving the center of mass towards
Well,
like
hopefully that
the tip of the ski.
change of leg lengths will help you move the center of mass down the hill, right? But the center of mass is also moving down the hill. So I'm a little bit confused by the question. So is the outside hip moving first or the inside hip moving first? Well, the hip's part of the pelvis.
I think the inside hip.
The inside hip moves down the hill, right? Right there, right?
But Rebecca, what are you talking about moving? The femur within the hip or sliding the whole pelvis sideways?
I'm talking about the sort of foragonal, when you're doing that
Okay, there we
foragonal
go.
direction, are you doing it more with the new inside hip or with the new outside hip?
It would depend on intent, whether you're doing a combination of extension and retraction or just extension or just retraction, right?
Assuming that you're just doing extension.
If you're doing extension, you're going to move you up or forward, right? But if I was gonna,
These guys aren't doing extension
I
though.
have to
They're
have, I have to
retracting.
have a retraction movement too.
Yeah, so they're
Otherwise,
retracting
I'm gonna be going
until,
up and over. I'm gonna be going up the hill, and then I gotta get over the old outside ski. So I have to soften one ski as I stiffen the other, or leg. Soften the new inside leg and stiffen the new outside leg as it lengthens. Which is kind of what she's doing, right? Because right there, she's starting to pressure the new outside ski as she softened the new inside ski. And she gets to right here, the leg lengths are getting a little bit longer. And then the outside leg is almost at its full length. But what does that do to the hip? I mean, that's why I'm a little confused by the question, because I don't really see her hip moving down the hill. I see her pelvis moving down the hill, like right there. It's coming towards us, right?
I guess I mean her pelvis.
Yeah. So she needs, so she's right here. She needs to get her body moving. Where's my arrows? Her body's got to be moving this way. Right? So she's up on her old outside ski. It's pretty stiff right now. Then she releases it. Well, maybe not here. Looks like she's actually going a little bit over. But it's less retracty and more kind of moving across. Then she's at the point where she's lengthened the new outside ski. She was right here, right about there is the long length. And then she releases it and her knees come up towards her, but that center of mass does not slow down. And that helps her start to angulate there onto the new skis.
Okay.
And then the new outside leg begins to lengthen as a ski, because remember, the skis are coming this way, but the body's going this way. So they're separating, right?
Yeah.
So then that allows her to lengthen kind of easily as the skis move out. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. See you next week.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.